Welcome to Season 3 of Adventures in Compliance. In this season, we are reviewing all of the Sherlock Holmes stories which are collected in the work The Return of Sherlock Holmes. It is a collection of 13 detective stories written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, marking the reappearance of the brilliant detective Sherlock Holmes after his apparent death in The Final Problem, which ended Season 2 and was the last story in the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. The collection spans various intriguing cases and mysteries that Holmes and his loyal friend Dr. Watson tackle. First, a word from this month's sponsor of the Compliance Podcast Network, Ethico.
In the intricate world of ethics and compliance, each second is precious, and slow case closures are more than just delays, they're missed opportunities. Enter Ethico. Our solution revolutionizes case management, cutting case closure times in half and turning every challenge into a chance for improvement. Imagine a workspace where efficiency and compliance coexist harmoniously. Don't just dream of faster resolutions, make it your reality. Visit ethico.com/CPN today to book a demo and dive into our exclusive white paper by Tom Fox, 2023, The Year in Compliance. Empower your team with the tools they deserve.
Today we take up the fifth story in The Return of Sherlock Holmes, The Adventure of the Priory School. This is one of my personal favorites, and in many ways I found the darkest and most troubling. It was published January 1904 in Strand Magazine. If you enjoyed this episode, you've enjoyed this series, or you just like stories about Sherlock Holmes, I hope you will subscribe or rate and review to this podcast, wherever great podcasts are listened to. Our story begins when Lord Saltire, the son of the Duke of Holdernesse, has been kidnapped from the preparatory school where he is a principal. The Duke has posted a reward, and the headmaster has asked Holmes to investigate. The boy's home life is not a happy one. His parents are separated, and the boy clearly misses his mother, although everybody seems to know that, which seemed to suggest the boy ran away to be with her. There's a clear escape route from his bedroom down the thick ivy to the ground. The boy had received a letter that day from his father, and it's not clear if that letter upset the boy or not. But the school's German master, Heidegger, has also vanished together with his bicycle. Very strange indeed. A few mysteries began to emerge. The boy's cap is discovered in the possession of some gypsies camped around the school. They claim they found it, but any student of British literature will know that where gypsies are found, they're always the first to be blamed in any story. Bicycle tracks are also found. One set identified as belonging to the missing schoolmaster ends with the discovery of his corpse with his head bashed in. The other leads go nowhere, and the case is obliterated, or rather, the prints are obliterated by hoof prints of passing cattle. Holmes does think it's strange that he's not seen a solitary cow the whole time he's in the area, much less cows that canter, gallop, and trot. Holmes decides to see whether he can flush out with some information that he puts out. Close to the Duke's home, he lets it be known he's anxious to meet with the Duke, for he has news of the missing boy. The innkeeper appears most surprised to hear this piece of information. Holmes registers this reaction, and slowly a web of local intrigue began to draw around him. The Duke's personal secretary is involved, as it was his bike tracks, and Holmes discovered that led to the tangle of not quite cow prints. The cows, of course, were horses, to which cow-shaped horseshoes had been affixed. The innkeeper, whose horse showed signs of having been recently reshoed, was in on it too. And the unwitting fourth player is the Duke himself, sucked into the intrigue through the machinations of James Wilder, who turns out to be the Duke's illegitimate son, and the missing boy is held in the end. This is a delicious mystery that takes so many twists and turns, even Holmes is unable to ravel all of its intricacies. Certainly for anyone reading the stories in order of publication, it more than makes up for the disappointment of its predecessor. As this latest story cycle nears its halfway point, that is, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, It's truly a worthwhile successor to many of his prior stories. Today, I want to begin with some compliance lessons from the Priory School. I'm going to start with ethical leadership, and here is in a little bit different direction is the headmaster of the Priory School. His name is Thornry Croft Huxtable, but he demonstrated ethical leadership by seeking Holmes' help when he was faced with a crisis involving the disappearance of a pupil. Ethical leadership obviously sets the tone for compliance and integrity within an organization, but sometimes asking for help is a step in ethical leadership. Next up, transparency and accountability. Here, Holmes emphasized the importance of transparency and accountability when investigating the case. He ensured that all parties involved were held accountable for their actions, up to and including the Duke. So he is status agnostic. What about due diligence? You might not think of due diligence as a lesson learned from the Priory School, but Holmes uses due diligence in his investigative strategy, pulling together multiple perspectives from the available evidence before reaching a conclusion. This highlights the importance of due diligence and compliance to prevent oversight and help mitigate risks. Next up, the importance of communication. Effective communication between stakeholders is and was critical in this story. Certainly, the headmaster, the police, Holmes, and even some of the witnesses. It was crucial for resolving the compliance issues. Clear and timely communication ensured that everyone was informed and appropriate steps were taken. And finally, training and education. The story highlighted the need for training and education on not only compliance, but really ethical behavior. If you're the head of a school, you need to alert everyone to their rights, obligations, and responsibilities. And it's the same inside of a corporation. Now, let me turn to some investigative lessons because I thought this case was deliciously complex, but it provided a lot of investigative lessons. Number one, thoroughness. Obviously, Holmes demonstrated thoroughness in his approach. He meticulously examines every detail from footprints to handwriting, etc. This emphasizes the need for a comprehensive set of investigative techniques. Critical thinking. Holmes employs critical thinking throughout the investigation, constantly questioning assumptions and considering alternative explanations. This highlights the importance of critical thinking in compliance and in solving complex problems that you may face. We've talked about attention to detail, but his attention to detail allowed him to, Holmes that is, notice subtle clues that others might overlook, and it underscores the significance of paying attention to even the smallest details during an investigation. Persistence. I'm not sure we talk about persistence enough in the compliance realm, but you must be persistent in an investigation. Collaboration. Obviously, Holmes collaborates with Dr. Watson as well as local authorities, but there's no more important lesson for the compliance professional than to collaborate and have engage in teamwork with all members of the investigative team as well as other corporate functions who may be drawn in. Next up, adaptability. Holmes demonstrates clear adaptability as he is able to move from one strategy to the next as new information emerges. In other words, as your risks change, modify your risk management strategy. This emphasizes the importance of flexibility and adaptability in your simply your investigative work, but frankly, your entire compliance program. So it's something that you have to have as a compliance professional. You often have to pivot based upon facts on the ground. And in this ever changing world, we have moved from, for instance, in risk management, we've moved from disaster recovery to business resiliency. Well, after the pandemic, we moved to business as usual. You have to be able to adapt, and you have to be able to adapt on the fly because you can't say, well, we're going to stop and go forward after we fix everything. You have to be adaptable. Compliance Podcast Network is sponsored this month by Ethico. Ethico is a leader for compliance champions like yourself with its ethics and compliance optimization system built to turn goals and guidelines into real ROI for your program. For more information and a special white paper, go to ethico.com/CPN. I hope you will join me through this entire series of short stories from the return of Sherlock Holmes. If you're a Holmes fan or you enjoy analogizing to compliance, leadership, and ethics, this is the podcast series for you. I hope you will take the opportunity to reread one or perhaps all of the short stories. They're short reads and a lot of fun. I'm going to be taking a deep dive into each one of them, looking at leadership lessons, ethical lessons, and/or compliance lessons from each one. If you're a Sherlock Holmes aficionado like myself, I'd love to visit with you about some of your favorite stories and perhaps record a podcast or two with you on them. So please contact me. You can reach me through the website of the Compliance Podcast Network. Adventures in Compliance is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. And as I mentioned, we are sponsored this month by Ethico. So I hope you will check out the Ethico white paper that's available through their special link on that we put in the show notes that I mentioned earlier. This is Tom Fox. I'm greatly looking forward to the return of Sherlock Holmes. Join me again next week for the adventure of the solitary cyclist.